You really think you deserve that money? My brother said, loud enough for everyone in the courtroom to hear. I felt every eye turn toward me. My hands tightened in my lap, but I didn't look down. I didn't flinch. Because if I did, he'd win. Then the judge leaned forward and said, calm but firm, we'll need to see the signed report. And for the first time that day, my brother's smile cracked. My name is Danielle Harper. I'm 34 years old. And until a few months ago, I thought I understood exactly where I stood in my family. I wasn't the successful one they bragged about. I wasn't the one they celebrated at dinner or defended in arguments. I was the one who showed up quietly, did the right thing, and didn't expect applause for it. I work as a physical therapist. It's not glamorous, but it's honest. Long days, tired feet, and just enough income to build something steady over time. I paid off my student loans on my own. I saved carefully. I planned my life step by step. No shortcuts. No handouts. My brother, Ryan, he lived differently. He was always the one they praised. The one they defended, even when he messed up. If he failed, it was bad luck. If I succeeded, it was expected. That was the balance in our house. And for most of my life, I accepted it. I told myself it didn't matter. That I didn't need their approval. That I could build something for myself without it. And I did. But I never expected the moment that would change everything, would come from someone who actually saw me. Our aunt. She wasn't rich in the flashy sense. No luxury cars, no big public life. But she was careful with her money. Smart. Observant. And she paid attention. Especially to me. I used to visit her every Sunday when I could. Bring groceries, help organize her paperwork, fix little things around the house. Nothing dramatic. Just showing up. She never made a big deal out of it. But I could tell she noticed. The way she'd smile when I remembered something small. The way she'd say, "You're dependable, Danielle. That matters more than people think." I didn't realize how much that meant, until she was gone. When she passed, the whole family gathered for the will reading. I remember sitting there, hands folded, not expecting anything. Honestly, I assumed everything would go to charity or be split evenly. That's what usually happens, right? But then the lawyer cleared his throat, and read her words. Clear. Direct. She left me $180,000. Not split. Not shared. Mine. For a moment, the room went completely silent. And then Ryan laughed. Actually laughed. Okay, he said, leaning back in his chair, shaking his head. That's not real. The lawyer didn't react. Just repeated it calmly. Ryan leaned forward this time. There has to be a mistake. She wouldn't leave that to her. Her. Not even my name. I felt something twist in my chest, but I stayed quiet. Then my mother spoke. Soft. Careful. But not defending me. Maybe we should double-check everything, she said. Just to be sure. And there it was. Not even a moment of support. Just doubt. Directed at me. I remember looking around the room, waiting for someone, anyone, to say, no, this is what she wanted. But no one did. Ryan smiled again, but this time it wasn't disbelief. It was calculation. Yeah, he said slowly. We should definitely look into this. That was the moment I knew. This wasn't going to be simple. If you've ever been treated like you didn't deserve something you earned, you know exactly how that feels. Like no matter what you do, someone's already decided your place, and stepping out of it makes you the problem. So tell me, have you ever had to prove your worth to your own family? If you have, hit subscribe. I'm serious. I read those comments. And click hype, if you've ever had to stand your ground when no one stood with you. Because what happened next, it only got worse. At first, it was subtle. Ryan didn't come at me directly. Not yet. He started with questions. Small ones. Too small to argue with, but sharp enough to cut. So, when was the last time you talked to her? Were you helping her with her finances? Did she ever seem confused to you? Each question wrapped in concern. Each one planting a seed. I answered calmly. Honestly. Yes, I visited her regularly. Yes, I helped organize some paperwork. No, she was completely aware of what she was doing. But it didn't matter. Because Ryan wasn't asking to understand. He was building something. And a week later, I found out exactly what. I got served legal papers. Right at work. In front of my colleagues. I still remember the way the receptionist looked at me when she handed them over, like she didn't want to be involved. I stepped outside, hands slightly shaking as I opened the envelope. Ryan was contesting the will. Claiming I had influenced our aunt. Claiming she wasn't in the right state of mind. Claiming I didn't deserve what she gave me. I read it twice. Then a third time. Each word hitting harder than the last. Because this wasn't just about money. This was him trying to rewrite who I was. And what I meant. That night, I called my parents. I thought, maybe, this was just Ryan going too far. Maybe they'd step in. Maybe they'd say, this is wrong. But instead, Danielle, my father said, voice tired, maybe you should consider settling. Settling. I repeated. Just, splitting it, my mother added quickly. To keep the peace. Keep the peace. I actually laughed. A short, sharp sound I didn't recognize as my own. So I should give up half of what she chose to give me, because he's upset. It's not about that, my father said. It is exactly about that, I shot back. There was a pause. And then the sentence that stayed with me. Why are you doing this to your brother? I pulled the phone away from my ear for a second. Just to breathe. Just to make sure I heard that right. Then I said quietly, why is he doing this to me? No answer. Just silence. And in that silence, I understood something clearly for the first time. I wasn't just fighting my brother. I was standing alone. A few days later, we had a small family gathering. I almost didn't go. But something in me said, don't disappear. Don't make it easy for them. So I showed up. And the moment I walked in, the room shifted. Conversations softened. Eyes avoided mine. Like I had done something wrong. Ryan was by the kitchen, laughing with a couple of cousins. He saw me, and that smile came back. The one that never reached his eyes. Well, he said loudly, raising his glass slightly, look who decided to show up. No one said anything. I walked in anyway. Calm. Steady. I was invited, I said. He chuckled. For now. A few people shifted uncomfortably. Still, no one stepped in. Then he leaned closer, just enough so everyone could hear. Enjoy it while you can, he said. It won't be yours for long. And that was it. That was the moment. The line crossed so clearly, there was no going back. I looked at him. Really looked at him. And for the first time, I didn't feel hurt. I felt certain. Because if he was this confident, he thought he had already won. What he didn't know was that I hadn't even started yet. The next few weeks felt like I was living in two different realities at once. On the outside, everything looked normal. I went to work. I smiled at patients. I followed routines I had built over years. But underneath, everything was shifting. Because now, every interaction with my family came with a question hiding behind it. What are they saying about me when I'm not there? And the answer came faster than I expected. It started with a message from my cousin, Emily. We weren't especially close, but we'd always been polite. Neutral. No drama. Her text was short. Hey. I saw something. Just thought you should know. Then a screenshot. It was Ryan's social media post. No names. No direct accusations. But it didn't need them. Funny how some people suddenly become responsible when money is involved. Taking advantage of someone who trusted you says everything about your character. Underneath it, comments. People agreeing. People assuming. People judging. And worst of all, some of those comments were from extended family. I stared at my phone, reading the words over and over again. Not one person asked me if it was true. Not one person said, this doesn't sound like Danielle. They just believed him. I didn't respond. I didn't comment. Because I knew something Ryan didn't. He was playing for attention. I was playing for the truth. But silence doesn't make things easier. It just makes things quieter. And in that quiet, the pressure started building. A few days later, my mother called again. Her tone was softer this time. Too soft. Danielle, we need to talk. I already knew what was coming. I've been thinking, she said carefully, this is getting out of hand. Then tell him to stop, I replied. Another pause. That's not what I meant. Of course it wasn't. We're a family, she continued. This court situation, it's tearing everyone apart. No, I said calmly. It's showing what's already there. She ignored that. If you just agree to split the money, we can put all of this behind us. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the ceiling. It was almost impressive, how consistently they missed the point. It was never his, I said. There's nothing to split. But is it worth losing your family over? That question. That exact question. Like the responsibility was mine. Like I was the one causing this. I sat up slowly. You're asking the wrong person, I said. And then I hung up. After that, things changed. Not dramatically, but noticeably. I stopped getting invited to things. No one said it directly. No one said, you're not welcome. They just didn't tell me. I found out about a birthday dinner from a photo someone posted. A weekend get-together from a comment thread. Little moments I used to be part of, happening without me. And every time I saw one, there was that small, sharp feeling in my chest. Not because I missed the event, but because I understood what it meant. They had chosen a side. And it wasn't mine. One evening after work, I sat in my apartment, still in my scrubs, staring at the legal documents spread across my table. Ryan's claims. His statements. The so-called financial evaluation report he kept referencing. That report bothered me. More than anything else. Because it didn't make sense. If something like that existed, I would have known. I had helped my aunt organize her paperwork. I had seen her files. She was meticulous. Everything labeled. Everything dated. There was no way something that important existed, and I missed it. Unless it didn't exist the way he said it did. I picked up the document again, reading the section where his lawyer mentioned it. The wording was vague. Careful. Like they were relying on the idea of it, more than the actual details. And that's when something clicked. Ryan wasn't confident because he had the truth. He was confident because he thought I didn't. The next day at work, I couldn't focus. Not because I was overwhelmed. But because my mind was connecting pieces. Moments I hadn't thought about in weeks. Conversations with my aunt. The way she used to double-check everything. The time she mentioned updating her documents. And then, a memory. Clear. Sharp. Unexpected. A folder. I could see it in my mind. Blue. Slightly worn at the edges. Labeled in her handwriting. Final evaluations. I froze. Because I remembered exactly where it had been. In the bottom drawer of her study desk. The one I had organized for her. I stood up so quickly my chair rolled back into the wall. Because if that folder was real, then so was the truth inside it. And suddenly, for the first time since all of this started, I didn't feel cornered. I felt ready. That night, I drove to my aunt's old house. It hadn't been sold yet. Everything was still there. Waiting. Locked in place like time hadn't moved. I stood at the front door for a moment, keys in hand, heart steady. Not racing. Not anxious. Just focused. Because something inside me had shifted. Ryan thought this was about pressure. About forcing me into giving up. But he forgot one thing. I had spent my entire life being underestimated. And people like that. They don't break easily. They adapt. I unlocked the door and stepped inside. The air was still. Familiar. And as I walked toward that study, I realized something else. What I was about to find wasn't just going to defend me. It was going to change everything. The house was exactly how I remembered it. Quiet. Still. Almost like it had been waiting for someone to come back and finish something unfinished. I closed the door behind me and stood there for a second, letting the silence settle. This place used to feel warm. Safe. Now it felt like evidence. I walked slowly down the hallway, my footsteps echoing just enough to remind me I was alone. But I didn't feel alone. I felt certain. Because that memory, the blue folder, it wasn't random. It meant something. And I was about to find out what. The study door creaked slightly as I pushed it open. Everything was still in place. The desk. The lamp. the neatly stacked papers. My chest tightened for a moment, not from fear, but from memory. How many Sundays had I sat right here, sorting documents, listening to her talk about things that didn't seem important at the time, but somehow always were. You have to keep things organized, Danielle, she used to say. Because when the time comes, clarity matters more than emotion. At the time, I thought she was just being practical. Now, I understood exactly what she meant. I walked over to the desk and knelt down, pulling open the bottom drawer. And there it was. The blue folder. Exactly where I remembered. My fingers hovered over it for a second. Not because I was unsure, but because I knew, whatever was inside this folder was going to decide everything. I picked it up slowly and placed it on the desk. Opened it. And started reading. At first, it looked like what I expected. Financial summaries. Notes. Professional assessments. But then I found it. The report. The one Ryan had been talking about. My eyes scanned the page quickly. Then slowed. Then stopped. Because what I was reading wasn't just different from what he claimed. It was the complete opposite. The report was clear. Detailed. Signed. And it said something I didn't expect to feel so strongly. It praised me. Not in a vague way. Not in a polite way. In a precise, documented, undeniable way. Danielle Harper demonstrates consistent financial responsibility, long-term planning behavior, and sound decision-making. I swallowed. In my professional opinion, she is more than capable of managing a significant inheritance independently. I sat back in the chair slowly, letting that sink in. Because this wasn't just proof. This was validation. From someone neutral. Someone qualified. Someone who had no reason to lie. And then I saw the signature. Clean. Original. Dated. Official. I looked back at Ryan's court document in my mind. The version he presented. And suddenly, everything made sense. He hadn't just twisted the truth. He had replaced it. Changed it. Hoped I'd never find this. What they didn't know was. I whispered it out loud without even realizing. Because now I understood something clearly. This wasn't just a misunderstanding. This was deliberate. Calculated. And risky. I kept going through the folder. Carefully. Page by page. And the deeper I went, the clearer the pattern became. My aunt had prepared everything. Every document. Every evaluation. Every decision. She had anticipated resistance. Doubt. Conflict. And she had documented the truth in advance. Like she knew someone would try to challenge it. Like she knew exactly who that someone would be. I had a plan they never saw coming. This time, I said it with intention. Because now, I did. I took out my phone and started taking photos. Every page. Every signature. Every detail. Then I carefully placed the original report back into the folder. Closed it. And held it for a moment. Not tightly. Not emotionally. Just, steadily. Because this wasn't about proving I was right anymore. That part was already done. This was about timing. Execution. Letting the truth land exactly where it needed to. As I walked out of the study, something inside me felt different. Not lighter. Not relieved. Stronger. More focused. Because for weeks, Ryan had been controlling the narrative. Pushing pressure. Creating doubt. Making it seem like I was the one defending something fragile. But now, I wasn't defending anything. I was holding the truth. And he had no idea. The next morning, I didn't call anyone. I didn't confront him. I didn't even respond to the messages that had started piling up again. Because now, silence wasn't just protection. It was strategy. Later that day, I met someone who would change how I approached everything. Dr. Evelyn Ross. She wasn't just a colleague. She was the kind of person who saw through noise. Through emotion. Through distractions. And when I told her everything, she didn't react the way most people would. She didn't get angry. She didn't get emotional. She just listened. Carefully. Then she said something simple. If he's willing to go this far, he believes you have nothing. I nodded slowly. But now I do. She smiled slightly. Then don't rush. I frowned. What do you mean? Let him build his case, she said calmly. Let him commit to it. The more confident he gets, the harder he falls. I leaned back, thinking about that. Because she was right. If I revealed everything now, he'd adjust. He'd backtrack. He'd try to fix it. But if I waited, if I let him believe his version was safe, then when the truth came out, there would be no escape. That's when I realized something important. This wasn't just about winning. It was about exposing. And for the first time since this all began, I wasn't reacting anymore. I was preparing. And Ryan? He was about to walk straight into something he created, without even realizing it. The strange thing about having the truth in your hands is how quiet it feels. There's no dramatic music. No instant relief. No sudden sense of victory. Just clarity. And once you have that, everything else starts to look different. Over the next few days, I didn't change my routine. I went to work. I showed up on time. I treated my patients like nothing in my life was falling apart. Because on the outside, I needed everything to look normal. But inside, I was watching, listening, waiting. Ryan, on the other hand, was getting louder, more confident, more visible. And that told me everything I needed to know. Because people who are unsure don't act like that. People who think they've already won? They do. A few days before the court hearing, I got another glimpse into just how far he was going. I was at a grocery store, nothing special, just picking up a few things after work. And as I turned down one of the aisles, I heard my name. Not spoken directly to me. Spoken about me. I slowed down slightly. Didn't turn. Just listened. 2 women. Neighbors. People who had known our family for years. I heard she pressured her aunt before she passed, one of them said. That's what Ryan told us, the other replied. Apparently there's documentation. Documentation. I almost smiled. Because yes, there was. Just not the kind they thought. I walked past them without saying a word. No correction. No defense. Because correcting rumors doesn't stop them. Truth does. And mine wasn't ready to be revealed yet. That night, I sat at my kitchen table again, the blue folder resting in front of me. Closed. Untouched. Not because I didn't need to look at it. But because I didn't need to anymore. I already knew what was inside. And more importantly, I knew when to use it. My phone buzzed. A message from my father. Your brother's lawyer is very confident. You should really reconsider settling before court. I stared at the message for a few seconds. Then set the phone down. Didn't reply. Because confidence, without truth, is just noise. The next day at work, I met Dr. Ross again. She was reviewing some paperwork when I walked into her office. She looked up, studied my face for a second, and then nodded slightly. You found something, she said. Not a question. A statement. I sat down across from her. I found everything. She leaned back, folding her hands. And? He falsified it, I said calmly. The report he's using, it's altered. She didn't react dramatically. Didn't gasp. Didn't interrupt. She just asked, do you have the original? Yes. And copies? Yes. She gave a small, approving nod. Good. That was it. No excitement. No celebration. Just confirmation. Because to someone like her, this wasn't emotional. It was strategic. Now what? I asked. She tilted her head slightly. Now you let him keep going. I frowned. You keep saying that. And I'll keep saying it, she replied. Because this isn't just about proving him wrong. It's about proving intent. I stayed quiet, letting that sink in. Right now, she continued, he believes his version is solid. That no one will challenge it. He thinks I won't find anything, I said. Exactly, she replied. And the more he leans into that belief, the more exposed he becomes. I looked down at my hands. Steady. No shaking. No hesitation. Because something had shifted in me. Weeks ago, I was reacting. Trying to understand. Trying to defend myself. Now, I was observing. Positioning. Preparing. Court is in 3 days, I said. Dr. Ross nodded. Then we prepare for one thing. What? She leaned forward slightly. Timing. Meanwhile, Ryan was doing the exact opposite. He wasn't preparing quietly. He was performing. The night before the hearing, another family gathering happened. This time, I wasn't invited again. But I heard about it. Of course I did. Because someone always talks. And what I heard. It was almost unbelievable. He's already planning what to do with the money. My cousin texted me privately. I read the message twice. Then asked, "What do you mean?" Her reply came quickly. He was talking about investments, trips, even joked about finally putting it to good use. I stared at the screen. Not angry. Not shocked. Just certain. Because that's what arrogance does. It makes people careless. It makes them speak too soon. Plan too loudly. Assume too much. Later that night, I stood in front of my mirror. Not fixing my hair. Not adjusting anything. Just looking at myself. Trying to see if I recognized the person staring back. And I did. But not in the same way as before. Because this version of me? She wasn't waiting for approval. She wasn't hoping someone would step in and fix things. She wasn't afraid of standing alone. She was ready. I picked up the blue folder one last time. Opened it. Looked at the report again. The real one. The one that told the truth. Then I closed it carefully. Placed it in my bag. And took a slow breath. Because tomorrow, Ryan was going to walk into that courtroom believing he had already won. My parents were going to sit behind him, thinking the same thing. Everyone who doubted me. Everyone who stayed silent. Everyone who believed his version without question. They were all going to be there. And none of them knew that the story they believed in was about to collapse. Not slowly. Not quietly. But all at once. The courtroom felt colder than I expected. Not physically. But in the way silence sits heavier when everyone is waiting for something to happen. I walked in with the blue folder in my bag, my steps steady, my breathing even. No hesitation. No second guessing. Because by that point, there was nothing left to doubt. Ryan was already there. Of course he was. Sitting confidently beside his lawyer, leaning back slightly like this was just another formality. Like the outcome had already been decided. When his eyes met mine, he smirked. That same expression he'd been wearing for weeks. Relaxed. Certain. Almost amused. "You made it," he said under his breath as I passed. I didn't respond. Didn't need to. Because for the first time since this all began, I wasn't walking into his narrative. He was walking into mine. I took my seat. Behind him, my parents sat quietly. My mother avoided my eyes. My father gave a small nod, like he wasn't sure which side he should be on anymore. It didn't matter. Not today. The hearing began. Formal. Structured. Controlled. Ryan's lawyer stood first. Confident voice. Clear delivery. He laid out their argument piece by piece. Carefully. Convincingly. "Your Honor, we have reason to believe the will in question does not reflect the true intent of the deceased." I listened. Calm. Focused. Supported by a financial evaluation report that raises serious concerns about Ms. Harper's ability to responsibly manage such a significant inheritance. There it was. The report. The foundation of everything he built. Ryan didn't even try to hide his confidence. He sat there, arms crossed, occasionally glancing back at my parents like this was already over. Like all of this was just a formality before he got what he wanted. Then his lawyer presented it. The document. Their version. Printed. Clean. Official looking. But I knew better. The judge reviewed it briefly. Then looked up. "And this is the original?" Ryan's lawyer nodded. "Yes, Your Honor." And that was the moment. Not the big reveal. Not the confrontation. Just a small, quiet moment where everything tilted, slightly. Because I saw it. The hesitation. Not from Ryan. From his lawyer. Just for a second. But it was there. "Very well," the judge said. "We'll take that into consideration." Then he turned slightly. "Ms. Harper." My name echoed in the room. I stood. Slowly. Deliberately. And walked forward. This was it. Not the emotional peak. Not anger. Not revenge. Just truth, placed exactly where it needed to be. I'd like to address the report, I said calmly. The judge nodded. Go ahead. I reached into my bag, pulled out the blue folder, and for the first time that day, Ryan's expression shifted. Just slightly. A flicker. Because he recognized it. You've been presented with a version of this document, I continued, my voice steady. But I believe the court should see the original. Ryan leaned forward. His lawyer turned toward him quickly, whispering something under his breath. Too late. I stepped closer. Placed the document on the table. Your Honor, this is the signed report. Silence. Not empty. Heavy. Focused. The judge took the document. Opened it. And began reading. Slowly. Carefully. And as he did, I watched Ryan. Because confidence doesn't disappear all at once. It fades. Piece by piece. At first, he stayed still. Still trying to hold on to that belief. That control. But then, his jaw tightened. His posture shifted. His eyes moved, not toward me, but toward the document. Like he was trying to see something from a distance that he couldn't reach anymore. The judge looked up. This report states the opposite of what was presented earlier. No emotion. Just fact. Ryan's lawyer stepped forward quickly. Your Honor, there must be. The judge raised a hand. Silence again. The signature on this document appears original, the judge continued. And the evaluation clearly supports Ms. Harper's financial capability. A pause. Then the line that ended everything. How do you explain the discrepancy? Ryan opened his mouth. Closed it. Looked at his lawyer. Looked back at the judge. For the first time since this started, he had no immediate answer. No confident response. No control. That's not, he started. But the words didn't land. Because they had nothing to stand on. I spoke then. Not loudly. Not aggressively. Just clearly. You never thought I'd find it, did you? That did it. That was the moment his confidence finally broke. Not shattered. Collapsed. Because this wasn't just about being wrong. This was about being exposed. In front of everyone. In the one place where truth actually mattered. The judge leaned back slightly, looking between both documents. One of these is authentic, he said. The other appears to be altered. No accusation. Just inevitability. Ryan's lawyer tried to recover. Tried to explain. But it didn't matter. Because the structure of their argument was built on that report. And now? It was gone. The judge closed the folder. Looked directly at Ryan. This court takes falsified evidence very seriously. Another pause. Longer this time. Heavier. And just like that. Everything Ryan had built over weeks. Every accusation. Every statement. Every attempt to take what wasn't his. Started unraveling. Right there. In front of everyone. And I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel satisfaction. I felt, still. Because this was never about winning against him. This was about standing in the truth, long enough for it to speak for itself. And now? It finally had. When we walked out of that courtroom, everything was quiet again. Not the same kind of quiet as before. This one felt different. Final. No one rushed over to Ryan. No one asked him if he was okay. Because there are moments in life where the truth is so clear, people don't know what to say. And this was one of them. My parents stood a few steps away from him. Not close enough to support him. Not close enough to stand with me either. Just, somewhere in between. Like they were still trying to figure out how they got there. My mother finally looked at me. Really looked. Not with doubt. Not with suspicion. But with something unfamiliar. Regret. Danielle, she started. But I shook my head gently. Not angry. Not harsh. Just, clear. Because some conversations don't need to happen right away. And some apologies come too late to change anything. I'm not doing this anymore, I said quietly. She frowned slightly. What do you mean? I mean I'm done proving myself, I replied. To him, and to you. My father stepped forward slightly. We didn't know. I know, I interrupted softly. And that was the truth. They didn't know. But they also didn't choose to know. And that mattered. Ryan didn't say anything. Not to me. Not to them. He just stood there, staring ahead like the world had shifted in a way he couldn't process yet. Because for the first time, things didn't bend in his favor. For the first time, being the one they always praised didn't protect him. I adjusted the strap of my bag and turned toward the exit. No dramatic goodbye. No final speech. Because closure doesn't always sound loud. Sometimes, it's just a decision. And I had already made mine. The weeks that followed were quieter than I expected. Not empty. Just calm. The case was dismissed. Officially. Clearly. No gray areas. The inheritance stayed exactly where it was meant to be. With me. Ryan? He stayed out of sight. No more posts. No more comments. No more confidence. Because when someone builds their position on something false, once it's exposed, there's nothing left to stand on. My parents reached out a few times. Messages. Calls. Careful attempts to reconnect. And I didn't ignore them. But I didn't go back to how things were either. Because moving forward doesn't always mean going back. I started focusing on myself again. Not as a reaction. Not as recovery. But as intention. I used part of the money to invest in my future. Advanced certifications. Better opportunities. Things I had always planned, just delayed. Not because I needed to prove anything. But because I deserved to build something stable. On my own terms. And slowly, something settled inside me. Not pride. Not relief. Something stronger. Clarity. Because in the end, this was never just about $180,000. It was about being seen. Being respected. Being trusted. And when my own family couldn't give me that, I learned to give it to myself. They tried to take what was mine. But in doing that, they showed me exactly who they were. And more importantly, they showed me exactly who I am. If your family has ever tried to take something that was rightfully yours, not just money, but your voice, your space, your worth, you know how deep that cuts. Share your story in the comments. I mean that. Because you're not alone in this. Subscribe if you believe in standing up for yourself, even when it's uncomfortable. And click hype to help this story reach someone who needs to hear it today. Did this story hit home? If it did, take a second to like the video and share your thoughts below. Click hype so this story can reach others who've been through something similar. Your support really does make a difference. And your voice? It matters more than you think.